Hey, it's Chris. Strong opinions, crowdfunding, why you shouldn't back anything. That's this video where I give you my thoughts to try and convince you not to back anything. And again, as always, if you hear my criticisms and you say, you know what, Chris, I'm okay with that. You know what I say? Go for it. Because again, I'm all about supporting indie publishers, but it has to be right for you. Consumer driven, not FOMO driven. You ready? Let's go. First up, newest on the list, Shadows of Brimstone, Lost Tombs, Hell Train, $120 each. Flying Frog Productions, great. This is the original, alongside Zombicide, Beer and Pretzels game. Is that what you're looking for? More miniatures, more dungeon crawl, more slight upgrades, more slight nuance mechanics there. You know, you're getting on a train and the train's going to be going towards a destination. You're going to have to deal with what's happening along the way. You're getting an Egyptian theme with this one as well. So you're getting away from the Wild Wild West, but it's a lot of plastic. It's going to be $120 each. They do some exclusives here as well. So just like with Zombicide though, if you're looking at this, you might already be completely saturated out of I have too much of this already, too much of this factor. And is this a good one to start in? Is this a good one to get some of these expansions with the secret sex? What's going to be dramatically different? And you can see the stretch goals even are split between the different pledge levels. So you're not even going to be able to get them all in one. They're going to be each dependent on which core box you're going to get. So you're going to miss out on stuff unless you FOMO and get all of them. Do you really need all of them? Well, maybe if you don't have any of this and this is your beer and pretzels type of game, you're going to get a ton of money's worth of stuff. But from there on, your guess is as good as mine. Is it as good as some of the other dungeon crawlers that are out there? I'm going to make an argument that answer to that is probably no, but I'm hoping that some of the updated mechanics are going to prove to be a little bit more with what we've seen recently on the evolution of this crawler type game in general. So if you like the thematic incorporation, go for it. Otherwise, maybe pass. Do I really need to say more? Gloomhaven, Frosthaven, RPG, miniature. I'll argue that, you know, they've sort of gone backwards in terms of this. Apparently, we're doing a live stream right on the front of the page because that's what people want to see, I guess. But $4.5 million? Amazing. 30,000 backers. Is it for you? Heck no. Yeah, you can go pay 15 or 20 bucks for this buttons and bugs solo style game, which I guess is fine if you want to do a traveled version. Again, I look at that and I go, conceptually, that makes sense. Actuality, who's gonna freaking play that? If you want a solo game, yeah, I mean, I guess it scratches the dungeon crawler itch, but if you're gonna play solo a lot of these games, you want the full experience. The other thing that I sort of have very mixed feelings about, that they said was going to be coming, it comes out with this Gloomhaven, Frosthaven, or second printing, if you will, Gloomhaven 2.0, Frosthaven second printing, is that they're finally giving us the Spiralbound notebooks. Frankly speaking, it's expensive though. $50 for Spiralbound notebooks so I don't have to deal with hundreds of tiles? It cheeses me off when you're already like 150 bucks in that they're like, hey, spend another $50. Like, I understand it and I want it, but I don't think I'm going to pay for it. Oh, that's a huge price for a quality of life measure. Huge. I understand it. Need I say more? Lifestyle game? You're not going to play this. You're not going to play the first one. You're barely going to touch the solo game because you know what? You're going to play other games instead. That's the truth of the matter. You don't need this whatsoever. I have a copy. I regret getting it right now, you know, because I'm never going to get through it all. I'd love to get through it all, but it's also an impossible task to get to the table with any consistency, especially if you have a family, you have kids, you have a job, you have anything else along those lines. You're just not going to get it played. Do you want to put in another $150 or $200? At least with some of these things like Cthulhu Death May Die, you know, you can play a one-off and feel somewhat satisfied. Are you going to feel satisfied with one Gloomhaven, Frosthaven mission in a month? Because then you're going to have to relearn the game every time you play it. At least with this, it's a brush up. Or with this, you just pull it out and play it. Even with something like this, right? Batoku. Look, no one's going to make the argument that Gloomhaven isn't a good game. No one's going to make an argument that Frosthaven's probably better. No one's going to argue that the Buttons and Bugs is going to be a quality solo game. The value for the miniatures? Awesome! Tons of miniatures for tons of money. Do you need them at this point? Because really, the marketing has been Gloomhaven miniatures, but it's really Gloomhaven miniatures for the RPG game. Gloomhaven miniatures for the RPG. Tiles for the RPG. Second edition to be more compatible with the RPG. And as a board game person, I'm not an RPG person. So How much of this money is going towards RPGs? How much of this is board games? Does it really matter? Not really. Semantics. Board gamer screaming at the clouds on his front lawn. That's me. Tons of add-ons. Do you need 300 miniatures? Are these miniatures actually even going to be good? I mean, that's the other quality of aspect that I have to wonder. Are these going to stand up to Themons? Are these going to stand up to Awakened Realms? Because frankly speaking, so far, I'm not quite sure. And do you want to get these in the beginning of what, like 2026, I think it says? Again, when I say all of this stuff, that's a lot of money to be putting out there, 2025. Until then, it's an investment that you're not going to gain anything on. Go put your money in the bank for 2 years, or the stock market, or CODs, whatever. But it's a lot of money for 2025. Folks, we're halfway through 2023. This is if everything goes according to plan. And this little Good Time Society streaming thing is really bothering me while I'm filming. I mean, the fact that I go down here and it follows me, I hate that. There's nothing more than I hate with other web pages that do it on like the news side of things. You can't even get away from it on BackerKit. Come on. Ridiculous. Next game, please. Next up, Mordred, CMON, and Kickstarter, right? Venn diagram that you always get to see on here. Speaking of Kickstarter exclusives, the rule book is meh. And Dice Tower's playthrough didn't give us nearly as much explanation as I think people were looking for, and that's the only video content that you're going to get. Now, with the 37, sorry, just kidding, a little bit facetious there, but 23 updates that have come out since the crowdfunding campaign has, launched, we're starting to see a little bit more of, okay, a second expansion here, Factions of Nature. So, as I mentioned, 3 new factions. I told you there's going to be at least 5 to go along with the base game. Now you're up to 7. So are these significantly different? What are the main differences? Well, at least they run you through some of it here, because fact of the matter is most of it probably won't be on the game page in here in the first place. I love King Arthur. I love this dark thematic incorporation, but especially with the more recently announced Shadowborn games of the King Arthur that has rumor has it at least, area control style game, why should I get this? Yeah, it's going to be a great value, $110, but are you going to want any of those other factions? To be frank, right there, 3 factions for, almost doubling the base game content with 1 expansion, but it's going to cost you half the price of a pledge in the first place. It's a ton of money for not a lot of knowledge about how this game is actually going to flow, play, and how some of this stuff is either going to break the game, make the game, or leave you anywhere in between. Again, you want to make money? Sure, buy this, sell it for, 20 or 30 bucks. Otherwise, I don't know, man. This is the biggest risk from CMON I've seen in a long time, and I give them kudos for, going out there and doing something different. At the same time, this campaign page is lackluster, just like a lot of the smaller games that I talk about on a more frequent basis as well. You don't have enough stuff about what makes it unique. You don't have enough stuff about what the monsters are actually doing and how you mix and match them and how they're going to be incorporated and what some of the abilities actually are and what is the flow going to look like. I mean, you get a little bit of that from the one playthrough, but there's nothing else out there. And so how close to the vest is too close? I think we're starting to see. Now, the real interesting thing is what's going to happen with these stretch goals as the campaign winds down, because they haven't even broken $300,000 yet, which is really low for them at this point. And we're starting to see they've gone back to $10,000 levels here when you were having them even be $5,000 previously. So how many more stretch goals do they actually have planned? Because I have to imagine that they have probably at least a dozen or so more, at least, if not closer to 2 dozen, depending on the campaign. So all in all, again, Kickstarter exclusive gameplay content, money-wise, sure. Can you invest this much in an unknown? Because that's kind of what it is right now, as cool as it looks. Probably pass. Stonespire Architects is a promo pack worth it. $30 price point. I think it's a good game from a card drafting, tile laying, what I wanted Boss Monster to be originally. But Thunderworks has not always given us the most incentive, going from one end of the pendulum to the other with crowdfunding, your game locking or pledge locking gameplay content behind Kickstarter or FOMO pledges, but now you're giving me the opposite of not really giving me much incentive. And so the real incentive is the little promo expansion deck that's going to go along with this. Stuffy's not a big fan of doing those during the crowdfunding campaigns. I mean, it's cool looking, don't get me wrong, but it's not a reason I'm going to get it on crowdfunding. I'm not going to get pencil sharpeners. I'm not going to get markers. I'm not going to get Stuffies as the enticement. I just talked my 9-year-old out of buying an Among Us copy tonight for Nintendo Switch because it had an Among Us Stuffy. And after 10 minutes of talking, he finally had this epiphany. His light bulb went off and said, yeah, Dad, you're right. I have way too many Stuffies. stuffed animals, in case you're not familiar. I don't need this. Save myself 10 bucks. Is it worth it for you? I think this looks great. I think the objective, the 4x4, drafting, passing, actually doing something meaningful, giving you significantly different than role player, because that was my problem with role player, was too similar. You min-maxed it every single time. I think this is doing something nice. I think this is going to be a better fit for me. But if I don't need this little Shrines and Fountains expansion, which is $7 later, which is only 7 cards, that's $1 a card too. That's not inexpensive. That's going to be probably over double that in terms of $2 per card by the time you get around to the shipping. So that's my big issue with it more than anything else. If you want to support the publisher though, it's a fine way. It's going to be pretty much equivocal, pretty close to what you're going to be putting up in the secondary market. So support the publisher at retail if you want as well. That makes sense as always. Tanares Adventure, the Ultimate Edition here. Yeah, I mean, it's a really, really well thought of PvP, PvE, dungeon crawl-esque game. But as has to be the main point on all of these is, where's your saturation point? Just like the previously mentioned Shadows of Brimstone. Saturation. Zombicide. Saturation. Cthulhu Death May Die. Saturation. Marvel United. Saturation, right? Do you need more of this? And there is more. And if you're getting more, it's going to cost you an arm and a leg. It's going to cost you another $90 essentially to get some of the new stuff. That's not inexpensive. And part of what you're paying for is a better storage system. How do you feel about that as well? Because we're seeing that trended, you know, across multiple campaigns. They've said that another one we'll talk about here in a minute, Planet Unknown, they're doing another campaign in the future, already planning for a big box. Like this, also big box. Where's the big box? Scythe, later, big box. Wingspan, later, big box. Now, again, don't get me wrong, but I feel like that's another way of getting nickel and dime, because just toss out the inserts in half these games and you can fit it in without needing to buy a big box, right? So anyway, I think this is awesome. I mean, I think this is a great game. There's a lot of people that really love this game. There's a reason it has a 9 rating on Board Game Geek. It's just, do you need PvP? Do you need PvE? Do you need these massive miniatures? They're absolutely deluxified and glorious in that sense. And again, the main combat situation that sets this one apart from the others is it uses more of a D20 combat system. And it gives you more of the quests, it gives you more of the alternative stuff, but it's hefty. This is a lifestyle game. People don't talk about this one as being a lifestyle game. It is. It's not as lifestyle as, say, Kingdom Death or Aeon Trespass Odyssey, like the preeminent ones, but don't kid yourself. Anything campaign style like this is lifestyle. It's just to a slightly lesser degree than, say, a Frosthaven as well. So, you know, don't kid yourself that this is just a dungeon crawl. It's not. It's got more than that. And if you're buying it, you're getting it for more than that. And there's nothing wrong with that. But can you get it to the table enough to justify it? To justify all of this stuff? Cool game for you though. You know, heart versus head here, folks. Heart versus head. How much of this can you even store? Speaking of storage though, make your own game room table shelf thing from ALLPLAY. For a company that's previously called Board Game Tables, I mean, we're getting a board game table, right? And the biggest problem I have with this one is, you know, if you're like me and you're tactical and you need to see something in front of you, like I like reading papers and articles offline printed. Like I know I can read the PDF, but there's something just lost there. And so for me, it's the same with furniture. I want to see, feel, touch, know the exact size, because, you know, you can show me dimensions online, but unless I see it in front of me, I don't get this sense of how big that actually is sometimes. Same thing with the couches when we just bought our couch like a year ago. Same thing here. Again, I need more storage, but I don't have the room for more storage either. So more storage is not going to be the solution. The solution is don't buy as many games, folks. And it's cool. I love the compartmental sections that you can do here that will shape to the board game's actual specifications and dimensions. But that's a lot of money for storage. And the other thing I hate to say about all of these campaigns for tables, they come in with this lowball price point. And we saw it like last year as well. They were like, this is the cheapest board game table ever to go on crowdfunding. It's $499 or $299 or whatever it was, right? And then you go into the details and they're like, okay, well, here's all the nickel and dime stuff that you can get extra. Like, here's the custom this, here's the custom that, here's the add-on for this, here's the drink cup holders, here's the extra table that goes underneath it, here's the board game topper, here's chairs we're going to sell you, right? This isn't called, you know, crowdfunding for chairs, but they're going to sell you the whole kit and caboodle. Or that's the whole, you know, old style way of saying everything all at once, right? Just like with the board games where you get the game and the coins and the promos and the mats and the art prints and the stuffies and the pencil sharpeners. Well, they're doing the same thing here. It's just with a table and all of its accoutrements, if you will. So that's why, for two reasons, I just can't do it from that side of things. And my wife would kill me. Again, it's not a cash flow thing. It's a where am I going to put it thing. Because frankly speaking, this is the most space I have for anything. And I'm running out of room as it is. Because you can't see behind the cameras, thankfully. So yeah, there you go. Good product, $250,000. But yeah, then let's head back over to Shards of Infinity. I was initially very impressed by this one. And then, you know, I read through the comments, I read through the board game forums, and, you know, people from previous campaigns, it sort of reminds me a little bit of Everdell Complete Collection, right? People were really pissed off when Everdell came out with the Complete Collection because they were buying the Complete Collection for less than what if you had done and supported the company in the first place to get all of the individual deluxeified versions. And people are really pissed by that, which is, you know, always one of those, I'm gonna poo on your happiness, right? Like, I'm unhappy that you got a good deal because I didn't get as good a deal, even though I've had it for years longer than you, right? You know, who in your cereal from that side of things? So I understand where people are coming from, that you're getting some new errata address, you're getting some new upgrades, you're getting some quality of life components, you're getting some new gameplay content here. And I love that. And I think this looks awesome. And I think this would be a great entry point. But if you're one of those people, you know, who already has a bunch of stuff, it doesn't make your stuff worthless, folks. It makes your stuff just not this. And if you were happy with your stuff before and you're only upset now that they announced this, well, then you're just kind of, And I have some sympathy for you. At the same time, if this would have never been announced, you never would have been upset and you would have been very happy with what you had. And similarly to Aeon's End, and the reason why I'm worried about Aeon's End is because this is a standalone expansion, because you're going to have to buy some overlapping stuff that you already have if you already own some of this previous stuff. And that's sort of also where I empathize with them, because I am in that Aeon's End, you know, situation where I have too much of it and I have too many standalone expansions with too much starter materials and health trackers and all that junk, right? That you don't need a copy of for every single player that's ever played the game at your table. You just need enough to play with like 4, right? And so that's the issue here. I think this looks like a great entry point, but again, it's still a relatively okay price point. But $60 plus whatever the shipping table is going to be, I mean, it's another $20. So you're looking at $80 essentially for this. Again, I like the gimmick of campaign legacy unlocking things. I like the gimmick of going head to head 1 versus 1 and unlocking things. At the same time, having done it with Aeon's End, personally speaking, I kind of just feel like I want to rip open all the envelopes, throw them all in, and just experience it all right then and there. Because, you know, I have to play how many times to get all the content? How many times are you going to play a game to unlock all the content? How many times are you going to play it? You're going to play it once or twice before you move on to the next hotness? Yeah, I'm talking about myself in the comment section there too, but it has to be brought out. If we're going to, you know, cast shade on other people, we got to look at ourselves in the mirror as well and say, I'm one of those people. So if I have to play this game 10, 15 times to get all the content, you know what? I might as well just, you know, when I rip off the shrink, I might as well rip open all the envelopes and throw them all in the first place. And some of you are going to shudder in the comment section when I say that. Sort of like the people that shudder when you throw away expansion boxes, toss the inserts, or just dump all the contents back in the box. You know what? Do you? Because, you know what? I'm not worried about what other people are doing, right? That's the most important thing. Looks solid, though. It's on my Board Game Geek wish list now, and I wasn't expecting it to be. So take that for what you will, but it's an expensive entry point to a deck builder that you need to know you're going to like in the first place. Sword and Sorcery. Speaking of dungeon crawler oversaturations, we've got several in the same video. Sword and Sorcery. It's very complicated, or more complicated than a lot of the others in terms of the upkeep, in terms of the AI system, in terms of the enemies that you're going to be utilizing and playing against. Now, the other problem with this one is, you know, contrary to what we just talked about, is this is not a standalone expansion. So you need to have one of the more expensive base games in order to fully utilize this expansion in the first place. And those other base games are going to run you anywhere between like $90 and $120. So even if this looks like the best thing for you, there's really not a point in getting it right now. You're really better off waiting for this to come to retail later and seeing if you actually like the game in the first place. If you don't know if you like the game, you shouldn't be buying in to this one at this point. Same thing with Shadows of Brimstone. You know, you could, but if you don't know if you like the system in the first place, it's an awfully expensive lesson to learn at this time. Especially if you buy one of the higher pledge levels in this campaign and you go, oh, well, I got the first stuff and I don't like it. And then I got all the rest of the stuff coming. I just ran across a Board Game Geek auction the other day. You know, person is selling pledges for like Euthia and Chronicles of Drunagor, and they've got some of it in hand, and they've got others that's, you know, still being shipped months and months and months from now. But it's like, okay, well, don't want to be one of those people in the future, right? I don't. Do you? So yeah, you can get tons of cool stuff. Yeah, you may miss out on a little gameplay content, but yeah, do know that this combat system is better for you than Shadows of Brimstone? Do you know it's better for you than Madara, than Cthulhu Death May Die, than Zombicide? Is this a better system for you? How much upkeep are you okay with? How much of the overhead do you want to deal with? And this one has a lot more than the other ones similar in the market to it. Not the most, but more than what you may prefer. And unless you've tried it in that sense, sometimes you don't know where you stand, because more isn't always more, but more can be more, if you know what I'm saying. You know, there's plenty of rules games I can internalize a lot easier than other ones. Aeon Trespass Odyssey, internalize the hell out of that one very, very quickly. Other ones, some of the heavier Euros, woo! Liege has some trouble there. So that's what you have to know about yourself, and that's why I say don't get nickeled and dimed, especially with some of this extra stuff, unless you're already someone who loves it, and then maybe just get one of the smaller ones instead. So, yeah. Sword and Sorcery. There you go. Cyclades. I'm not going to get it. I think it's too expensive for the retail version. If you know me, if you watch my channel at all, if you're one of those new people that just joined and just subscribed, is just watching, I am Team Standee. I am Team Meeple. I am not Team Miniature overall. And so I love the aesthetic better than the usual gray stuff or the slightly colored plastic stuff. It does nothing for me aesthetically. I love the meeples that go in one of my top games from last year. I'm looking for it because it used to be right down here sitting next to me. Keep the Heroes Out, right? These awesome wooden meeples that are shaped in the shape of the creatures. And so if you have the same things that go here, I am, more than okay with that, because guess what? I'm getting the same game at a lower price. I'm getting all of the deluxeified goodness. I am getting all of the aesthetic value as a non-painter that I can out of it. And I'm paying what, like a third of the cost that you are? Huh? And let's take a look here. $100 for that, 120 for the stretch goals, but it's 60 euros for that. No way is this going to be 60 euros. And look you're getting all the stretch goals. There's no gameplay content really a whole lot exclusively locked. So if you're okay with missing out on the super deluxeified things, this is an easy, much easier than all of the other ones, pass, because you know this one's coming to retail. But I'll tell you, just like previously with Shards of Infinity, this one has made my wish list. This one is one that I am heavily looking at retail right now, because it bears repeating again as well, multiple times in this video. You can still support publishers at retail. It's okay. You have my permission. You have everybody's permission. And you know what? You'll probably get free shipping too, because you never are going to have a problem getting free shipping. I know you because you are me. And there's never going to be an issue of having enough stuff in order to hit that threshold. So can you pass on the pretty plastic miniatures? If you can, get it later, folks. Get it later. That's okay. DC deck building. Cryptozoic. Say what you want about Cryptozoic. I am not a big fan of a lot of their games. They just don't hit the mark with me at all. And this is one of them that really doesn't do much for me. But I recognize that they've put out a relatively enticing product, because otherwise you don't get $500,000 on a campaign without trying really hard and putting out something people want. See Mordred from earlier in this video, which is going to struggle to get to even where DC deck building, right? If I had said to you a month ago that Cryptozoic is going to outperform potentially 2-1 the next CMON campaign, you would have laughed me out of the park. Or you would have said, how much is Cryptozoic going to raise? Are they going to raise $1 million or $2? No, here we are, DC deck building. Again, I love the DC theme. Give me a different DC game though. I'm waiting for my DC United, right? All trepidatiously fearing the moment CMON gets the DC license and we have to deal with the FOMO that comes with that and the Marvel United universe of things. Again, I love the new mechanics, but I worry it's a little bit more legendary. And again, this is one where there is some gameplay exclusive content that you're getting locked pledge level behind. But the problem I have is just, you're going to buy more to try and save more. They have the pledge levels that are much higher. They're going to get you a couple things that you may not want as well. And the main other Kickstarter exclusive is just a cover. I don't really want the 2-player rival game. I don't want the cover. And so the savings there for someone who's just maybe looking at one of these base games right here, and I don't even think these are base games. I think you actually have to have them as expansions. I could be wrong on that, though. Don't take my word for that. I don't remember too much about the details. I mean, I like the mechanics they're getting, but the problem I have with this is assuming this is a standalone or assuming this isn't a standalone, either way, these mechanics are significantly more complex. And so there's significant creep, just like with Aeon's End, and it sort of makes some of the old stuff obsolete, or some of the old stuff that's just not going to be as powerful. And if you try and mix and match some of the old stuff with the new stuff, is it really going to be as compatible as you want? And the frankly answer is that it's not. And that's just what comes with these games. That's what comes with these, you know, board games. I see it on my video games on my phone. You know, I'm part of a game called Marvel Puzzle Quest, and they put out heroes twice a month with new heroes. And guess what? The heroes that have come out over the past 6 months are insanely stronger than the ones that came out, you know, like 8 years ago, because they just are. Because they're running out of things. They're needing to add new mechanics. They're adding new keywords. They're adding new all of that stuff to make it more dynamic. And which honestly makes the game better overall. But if you're an early adopter from previously, how outdated does it make some of the other stuff, and how much you're going to use some of the older stuff then, and then it just sits on the side, and what are you going to do with it? Because you already have too many games in the first place. I love the art though. I just wish there was another really good DC game out there, and there isn't, which is sad and unfortunate, because as many good games of Marvel that we have, this is really something else that should be able to stand on its own, and it just doesn't. And so I would love to see it get more incorporated, because they're really, again, just like Marvel United, they're digging deep into the DC universe. This is not like skimming the surface. This is a lot of cool stuff, cool storylines, cool incorporations, but gameplay mechanics just aren't there for me. So that's why it's never been a huge interest. But I mean, I think some of the newer stuff is definitely more appealing than some of the older stuff. And so that's also why it's still funding and raising this much more, is because it's just looking better than how it used to. And I give them, you know, Cryptozoic a lot of kudos, because if it wasn't, again, you don't raise $500,000, period. Next up, we have Wolves, Coyote and Crow, putting out a 3 to 6 player cooperative set collection style of game, but that's also semi-cooperative. And there's just not much information, at least when I originally ran it, when I did the breakdown of how it actually plays. No video, not a whole lot of information. Now we're getting a little bit more down here. Half of this stuff wasn't previously covered, so you're getting a little bit more right now. I mean, the problem is, you know, again, they have these links to these medias. Well, half these are, you know, interviews, or half these are like Geek Dad coverage. I mean, that's the text version of me talking. Casual crowdfunding coverage, brief coverage on their crowd control page. So, I mean, all of this stuff is the same stuff that I'm doing right now, and that's not very more helpful. Upcoming stretch goals, I mean, they're donating a bunch of copies, and they're donating a bunch of stuff. So I give them a lot of kudos. But at the same time, you know, as protection for consumers myself, I'm not in this to buy games for other people. I'm in this to buy games for myself that fit my collection, and I love being charitable. And if it's lining up with how I want to be charitable, otherwise I can be charitable in other ways. I can put my money towards other charitable causes that, you know, I'm going to also feel, you know, more connected to. And so I love that they're doing that, but it doesn't make me automatically back your game just because you're doing that either. And so it needs more information. It needs more flow. I don't want to go play a tabletop senior game in order to learn how to play it. Give me more information on how the game actually plays on the page. Give me more of an in-depth rulebook. Give me some sort of, this is why this game is better than others. And it doesn't do that. And so that's why, from that standpoint, again, it's a relatively easy pass, despite it getting $64,000 and almost 1,000 backers, which is really good, all things considered, for what they've got on the page. Planet Unknown, Supermoon expansion, deluxe reprint. I mean, people are getting in on this. This is a good price compared to what happened in the secondary market. And again, if it goes anything like the first time around, you're not going to see it at wide retail. You know, sparse retail here and there, but it's going to be out of stock relatively quickly. And they didn't offer the deluxification at retail previously. Do you need some of the deluxifications? No, you don't. The Lazy Susan that they've got, even with the retail one, is absolutely great. I don't need deluxified components with the little markers and the little moonlanders and, you know, the little meteorites. No, don't need them whatsoever. I give them kudos though, and I give them a lot of props, because this expansion is relatively well priced with a lid. Don't need a lid. Not sure if I want actually a more complex game though. A little more content, but I've read through the rules, I've looked at some of the video, and I just go, I don't really know if I want this game to go longer. It goes relatively long for a tile laying engine build style of game in the first place, and to add potentially like 15 more minutes or 5 more rounds or whatever it says is nice in theory, but I worry about it jumping the shark, sort of like the first expansion for the Isle of Skye with the, was it Druids expansion, where it added too much. That's what I look at this and I worry about. And so if you're like me and you got a retail copy, well, I'm looking down here and I'm saying I don't need neoprene mats. I mean, that's a lot of money for neoprene mats. As much as I actually love neoprene mats now, I would argue neoprene mats is the one deluxification I am willing to pay more for on a routine basis. But really what I'm looking for down here is I'm looking for the hobby retail content upgrade situation, which is $20. It gets you a bunch more corporations, a bunch more planets, and I guess they're going to give you a wooden token to go with it. But I mean, this variability is what I'm looking for, and that's what I like to see. So that's the pledge level I'm honestly probably going to end up getting, because I don't see that available widely at retail regardless. But the $130 pledge for the deluxification here, do you need the Supermoon as well? Well, probably not, but that's costing you with the expansion less than what people were selling for the deluxification like a month or within a month prior to this campaign launching. So if you were really interested in this game, I hate to say it, but that's probably a really good price. Even this one is a good price, but this one's probably going to be better overall. As much as I hate saying that, as much as I really don't endorse the Supermoon expansion, screw it. You know what? Actually, I take that back. Go with this, $100. Go with it. Best value right there. But again, if you can get the retail pledge later at $40 at retail, and you buy the $20 right now because you're planning on picking it up or pre-ordering it as soon as it becomes available and not waiting for it to actually, go out of stock again, then you're looking at, $20 plus the $5 or $7 it's going to cost you for shipping this, and the $40, and you'll hit the free shipping threshold as I mentioned earlier. Even if you don't, you get it from Game Nerds for $45. You're looking at 3/4 of the price than if you would get it deluxeified here. So again, unless this is going to be one of your mainstay games forever of all time, is it worth saving $25 not to pay for extra bits that aren't going to make a difference because you're only playing it once or twice a year anyway? Whew. Right? Okay, let's go. Coloma. Coloma. This is a game I actually wasn't completely aware of whatsoever. I mean, it was one of those where, I go, oh, okay, I may have seen that in Periphery. But the expansion with a reprint of one of the deluxeifications from 2019, and if you had asked me, I would have guessed this game was like a 2012 or 2015 game, and the expansion is offering a little bit more variability, sort of like what the Valhalla expansion did for Champions of Midgard, meaning if you actually end up with that bust, right? Like, if you end up with too many of those, you're just kind of SOL, and sometimes that's out of your control, especially if other people are selecting the same thing, and, if it happens to you 3 or 4 times and it happens to everyone else only once, well, yeah, you're kind of screwed, but this gives you a mechanic to sort of make up for that, as well as to get more benefit, just like with the Valhalla expansion from Champions of Midgard, where if you lose a battle, well, in the base game, your guys were just lost and you're just kind of SOL. But then with the expansion added on, it gives you a benefit for losing that to sort of balance it out. So you can actually be a little bit more courageous. You can be a little bit more adventurous, and you can, not have to play it as safe. And I love that mechanic here. And I would argue that this is probably an expansion that probably actually, at least on Periphery, not having played the base game whatsoever, but having actually now made my list of things I'd be interested in playing or trading for, I'd say it makes it better. Champions of Midgard, they say you play it with both of the expansions. You don't play it without the expansions anymore. It's just that much better of a game, sort of like Lords of Waterdeep as well. And it gives me vibes of that. Is it really that good of a price from the reward standpoint? I have no idea. This is one I could easily see it going either way on. If you're not sold on it, though, I mean, it is a 2019 game, and if you don't want the deluxeified version, you can probably pick it up at retail for like 30 or 40 bucks, depending on the secondary market as well. I'd be surprised if you couldn't actually get it for even less than that. And so, again, if this is going to be available and there's not really a whole lot of, well, they say stretch goals. Let's see what their stretch goals are. If this isn't exclusive, well, and it doesn't say that they are, I'd assume most of this is going to be in the expansion at retail as well. So it's an easy pass from that standpoint. Go out and try it sooner, and then maybe even just late pledge if you really want to support them, because you could buy a copy of this, play it for a couple months, and still make your decision before the pledge manager closes, probably sometime late or at the end of this year. Now let's go to this one, Etariya. You don't need to get this one whatsoever, but I really love the abstract game that's on this page, so I have to mention it. And is it a good value? I don't really remember even what the pledge levels were at this point. So $27, I mean, yeah, it's probably a little expensive for what it was. If you really like this, you support it, again, at the publisher side of things, whether it's at retail or crowdfunding. Medias, yeah, it's only got $9,000. This is by far and away the lowest, I think, of any of these games in this video. I have no clue about the Elven Relics game, but the abstract version of things I was super happy with. My wife was super happy with it. We were both happy with it. And it's a cheaper version of one of the other wooden games that we really like called Tintas, which is an absolutely awesome abstract game. But this does it in a slightly different way with slightly more modularity and a little bit more going on the board itself. But I literally like it. And, if you want to get it at all, you know what? Go for it. Yama. Speaking of abstracts, speaking of underrated abstracts, speaking of abstracts that you've never heard of, this designer, I have his 2 other previous games, 2 of the other 3, Kanat's previous games, Sayu and Iro. Both are incredibly deeper than they look on the surface, and they're almost like too deep for me from a strategic side of things. I am much more tactically abstract, but you're not going to find them widely available at retail. And to be frank with you, it's this one and the more recent one with like the balls that you move around in sort of a, well, I'll show you down here in a second. Otherwise that sentence is going to get really weird. But this is tic-tac-toe 4 in a row, Connect 4, if you will. Only you're doing it with cubes and sides of the cubes, and you have a 3-dimensional aspect to it that you're not having otherwise. So I really love the look of this game. And, $25 is, you're not going to get it on the retail market or the secondary market unless you're buying a used copy, or actually 31. So take that for what you will. I'll show you the other one down here. This was Iro. This is like a super complicated chess only with chips. This is a flipping everything depending on the direction of the arrows side of things. Super complicated, much heavier than it looks. Don't be fooled. This is the other one that I was looking at down here. This is Wana. Wana is the other one I'm really interested in as, an abstract lover. But I love highlighting these on the crowdfunding campaigns, but a lot of these, like the indie designers, this one you may not actually be able to get secondary wise, so you support on crowdfunding. But again, $10,000. So if he wasn't putting out good games previously, folks, this wouldn't be getting funding either at a $31 price point. Take that for what you will. Luddite, the only print and play on the, roundup this time. So I just don't know. I worry when I see quotes like this at the top. Solo, competitive, cooperative. It's awesome at all accounts. Because I think it's really hard for any game, even a roll and write, even as it's, distilled down to the essence of what these games can be, to be really good at all three of them. Very few, if any, games are really that good for everybody. And now I'm not saying they can't be all really, really good, but I'm saying, are they all going to be right for you? And with a roll and write from this style of things, at least I guess you can afford for one of them not to be good or good enough for you from that standpoint. The only problem I have is I kind of wish the designers of Waypoints did when they just said, okay, we're only going to give you the roll and write, because the jump level here between the roll and write and the printed is massive, because not because the gameplay or the contents are actually that extensive, but because, okay, $5-6 to $45, because they're offering like art prints and some deluxeifications and some non-gameplay stuff as a whole. And so these comic graphic novels, I don't need that stuff. Just give me the gameplay. I'm actually happier probably just to do the print and play. I'd really prefer sometimes, because especially they're doing the dry erase with this one, which again, highly underrated. I did wish more roll and writes in general did markers, erasable markers, rather than just like giving me 50 sheets of things. Just more environmentally friendly, at least from my perspective. It's probably not. You guys are probably going to yell at me in the comment section, but I don't need UV finish. I don't need spiral bounds. I don't need super chunky dice, custom done. I mean, that's where your $45 is coming in. And so give me the $5 version instead. I can print it off in color, at home and be good with it from that standpoint. But it's doing awesome. Again, $20,000. This is better than Wayfarers, which I, backed last month. And so take that for what you will. I'm really impressed. Hamlet. Pros, cons. They're addressing some of the criticisms and the concerns that were on the previous campaign of the iconography just being way too small, it being a little bit not component-wise what people were promised, and they're adding a little bit more that's going to branch it out as a whole. And when you've got the shut up and sit down recommendation, you throw it at the top. I don't care who you are. But do you want a sort of wooden church that's a little bit bigger? That was kind of promised the first time around. Do you want new fish and new lakes that you're going to have to go across and travel across and use your donkeys and boats to go across that you did like the first time? I mean, I like it in the sense that it's not hard to get the resources where you want. At the same time, I'm just not sure it's quite the pick up and deliver that I am looking for. And I've got my review still coming out shortly here in the next week or so, but it's expensive for what it is. I'd probably wait for retail, because if anything, you heard me say in the earlier comments that I am team standee, I am team meeple. Well, I've had 2 or 3 games in the last year or two that have had screen printed meeples, and transparency here, they do nothing. The difference between non-screen printed and screen printed is 0. And so if I can get them without the screen printing for a cheaper cost, I have absolutely no qualms about waiting now. I kind of got suckered in by Castles by the Sea, which is right here behind me, with them, but it also got me an expansion, so I kind of went with it. But I easily could have done without them. I wish I would have saved $5 or $10 from that, because I don't see the difference. You look at the color, not what's on them, even if you make the little funny shapes slightly different. Because, again, super awkwardly looking humans on these sort of things. I think those are ugly, atrocious, putting humans on the meeples. Donkeys, sure. Donkeys look like they're appropriate size, shape, and, form. Everything else, no. So, I mean, they're doing a good thing, though. They're giving upgrade kits for people who backed previously. So they're giving you bigger, better versions of things that really make the game a little bit harder and more tedious overall. And they're giving you these houses, which, again, is kind of a weird thing if you read the game rulebook. These houses actually take your workers off of the placements every time and get put back in there, and then you basically just send them back out. So it makes doing the movement around a lot easier, because that was what the criticism is, like the movement, they can only move like 1 space per turn. And so that's just going to give you carte blanche, which is going to open the game a lot more, especially as the game board actually expands, because you're laying these tiles down or building these tiles down as a collective area in front of you, and you can, really have trouble getting from one end to the other. And if you're at the wrong end when other people are putting all the stuff down the other end that you want, especially at higher player counts, you can actually have some serious issues there. So it's kind of a good thing, but it's kind of also, I don't know how people are going to feel about it. Again, custom printed tokens, things like that, I just think are not necessary. And if you're not a deluxeification junkie, you can easily pass on all this stuff, because the other wooden versions of a lot of this stuff, even at the retail version, are completely adequate. They are. So 30 euros for the expansion as well. That's a heftier price point for an expansion, especially a slightly deluxified, or even if it's not deluxified. So take that for what you will. $200,000. And if people really had such bad thoughts about the first one, because the board game geek rating is only like a 7.0, but if it was really that bad a game, you wouldn't be seeing 5,000 people plus going back in and getting more. So last up here, we have Nestlings. Nestlings from Tangerine Games. Again, this is one where I go, you know, yeah, it's 300% funded. Yeah, it's going to probably get close to $100,000 by the time it ended. But also, you know, with all of the raving reviews and the raving comments on this one, I feel like there's also a little bit of a disconnect about why people aren't backing as much, because there are some very strong comments by some very preeminent people saying how good they think this game is going to be. And so basically it's a resource management style game where you're going to these different biomes, and depending on who's there and how many are there, you're going to get different resources, and you're going to select them in certain orders, and you're going to be mixing and managing that over a certain number of rounds in an area majority sort of dice worker placement style game. You know, especially with the set collection aspect of, you know, controlling a certain number of biomes and, you know, set collecting it there and activating separate bonuses and gathering. I mean, there's layers. People really seem to dig the nature themes nowadays as well. But is it because, you know, the price point is being increased significantly by these wooden resources? I mean, I have to feel like that's where it is, because this is an $80 game, or potentially even a $100 game that is also masquerading as a $40 game on crowdfunding, which is going to be less than that at retail. So that's maybe the biggest disconnect as a whole, because otherwise I'm not seeing it. As someone who looks at more pages of these than, you know, almost anyone on the internet every week, where's the disconnect, and why isn't it having more support? Because if you had said to me, what do I think this is going to get funding wise, especially with all the comments in the video, I mean, yeah, it's got 1,000 backers, which is really good, but I would have expected more. And so it's just kind of an interesting test as well to say, why isn't this one getting more when other ones are that have similar vibes, aspects, mechanics, and themes? And the answer is, frankly speaking, sometimes don't have a freaking clue. So there you go. That is quick hits, strong opinions. Don't back anything, but if you do, I mean, you can also tell them Liege sent you, because you know what? Help me help you. Just saying. Just putting that out there. Subscribe if you want, I guess. Got a couple reviews done this week. Got some vacation next week. So video schedule is going to be a little bit different, but I have stuff pre-planned and pre-taped, and I'm going to be taping a bunch of stuff this week as well, trying to get a few more, just give me some, you know, options next week, but we'll see. That's all I got. That's all I got, man. You know, I have a weird story about my wife and finding a dying bat in our driveway. Like, all I have to say is I heard this story and I said, you didn't get near it, did you? Right? Oh, I just tossed it back out in the woods far away from us. How far? Oh, just over on that side of our land. We have very small property. Oh, the kids don't go through there. I'm like, honey, how do you think the bat got on the driveway in the first place? And mind you, this was during the daytime. Do you think it's just going to stay where you threw it? I mean, yeah, I threw it in a Tupperware container. How'd you get the Tupperware container on it? Well, I had to go over. We have like an 8-foot rake. Push it away with that thing. Call animal control. Don't get freaking near a bat that's out in the daytime. Red flag. Warning, warning, warning. Anyway, I got nothing else. If you missed my video from earlier this week, though, I'll tell you right now, go check that one out. 3 games in there that I'll tell you right now are probably going to be in my top 10 that I'm going to be doing reviews on here shortly as well. So hopefully that's one of the reviews I'm filming one of these nights in addition. But I don't know. I'm done rambling. This is what you get, though, if you're new to the channel. I ramble on about real life at the end because why not? It's my channel. Peace out. Stay classy. Have a great day.